Welcome to FRP Bridge Drain Pipe. The goal of this video is to demonstrate the proper method for making a socket joint on Grace Composites Bridge Drain Pipe. Before beginning, make sure you're wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment. We recommend protection for your hands, eyes, ears, and respiratory system. Consult the appropriate MSDS sheets for details on the appropriate personal protection equipment. Information on the proper disposal of leftover materials can also be found on the MSDS sheets. We'll start by looking at the tools necessary. For cutting the pipe, use a reciprocating saw with an abrasive blade. Do not use a tooth blade because it'll tear the pipe. Only use an abrasive blade, which can be purchased at most home improvement stores and is made for cutting tile. The best choice is a circular saw. The angle drive type is excellent. They give a great view of the line while cutting. A diamond blade is recommended, but a standard masonry type blade can also be used. When cutting the pipe, make sure the pipe is cut square. For marking the cutting line, use a commercial pipe fitter wraparound, corrugated cardboard, or any other way to assure that the cutting line is square. A standard pencil can be used to mark the pipe. It's necessary to pre-sand the ID of the fittings. They are pre-sanded from the factory, but they need to have a fresh surface. Use either an abrasive roll with a hand sanding action, or to get the job done more quickly, use either a pneumatic or electric flat sander. Another alternative is to mount a flat disc in a drill, but this is less efficient because of how slowly it spins. To prepare the OD of the pipe, we recommend an angle grinder with an abrasive disc. We recommend an aluminum oxide disc with a 24 to 40 grit. The one we'll be using for this demonstration is 24 grit. Included in the kit is a set of written instructions to use as a guide. Use a carpenter's level to ensure that the pipe is square and straight. We also recommend the use of a stand of some sort to secure the pipe. Use a wooden stick or a plastic spatula for mixing and spreading the adhesive. Also, a paintbrush with some solvent is useful for cleaning the outside. At the larger sites, we found that a small squeegee, like a Bondo spreader, is helpful for spreading the adhesive. To accelerate joint curing, the use of a hot air gun or heat blanket is recommended. The adhesive is distributed in 1 pint, single gallon, and 5-gallon kits. For the single gallon and the 5-gallon kits, a small measuring container like a 1-pint measure is useful to meter the proper amount of adhesive. The hardener for the adhesive, the organic peroxide, comes in a small bottle. An additional small measuring container is provided for the hardener. After the joint is assembled, it will take some time for the adhesive to set before the pipe is moved. The process can be accelerated in cooler weather by using an electric hot air blower to warm the joint. After the joint has gelled, an electric heating blanket can be used that will cure the joint in approximately 15 minutes. When cutting the pipe, it's necessary that the pipe be cut square and true. This can be accomplished by marking a straight line using the standard pipe wraparound. Attach the wraparound and then mark the cutting location with a pencil. For the darker type pipe, it may be beneficial to use a grease pencil or something in a lighter color for marking the cutting location. This demonstration uses a circular saw to cut the pipe. The socket back on most fittings is 3 inches, so it's helpful to put a line back to 3.5 inches. This will be the area that will be sanded to prepare the pipe for fitting. This can be done without marking, but the job will be much neater if it's marked at 3.5 inches. This will make it easier to sand. If an angle grinder is used to sand the pipe, it's necessary that 100% of the glaze in the area that will be bonded be removed. The total preparation time for the 8-inch joint was approximately 1.5 minutes. Notice that 100% of the glaze area has been sanded off. Be careful not to touch the pipe with dirty hands or gloves after it has been sanded. Even the natural oils in your hands can contaminate the bonding surface. To minimize this risk, sand the pipe immediately before you're ready to bond the joint. It's also necessary to sand the inside diameter of the fitting socket area. The fittings come pre-sanded from the factory, but because they may become contaminated while handling, it's recommended that they be resanded. It takes a few minutes to hand sand these areas with emery cloth. To speed up the sanding of these areas, it's helpful to use a power tool. Die grinders are available in electric or pneumatic, or a drill can also be used, but will take longer as mentioned earlier. After sanding, be sure not to touch or contaminate the sanded surface. At this point, check the joint to make sure that it's a nice fit and slides freely on the pipe. Now prepare the adhesive for bonding. When the adhesive arrives in the bulk container, there may have been some settling over time. Stir the adhesive to assure that there are no loose liquids on the top of the adhesive. The mixture is fairly thick, which is necessary for it to hold its place in the joint to gain sufficient strength. It will thin up a bit when the hardener is added. The recommended amount of hardener is 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce. In hotter temperatures, you'll use the smaller amount, and in colder temperatures, you'll use the larger amount. Stay within the 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce parameter. The adhesive and the catalyst must be thoroughly mixed. 1 minute of mixing time is recommended. Also be sure to scrape the sides and bottom of the container so that the entire adhesive is thoroughly mixed. The surfaces must be wetted with the adhesive. Since the adhesive is fairly thick, wet it by applying a thin, even coat with pressure to squeeze the adhesive into all of the surfaces. After all of the surfaces are wetted, a second, thicker coat of adhesive will be applied. Inside of the fitting, you want to have a 1/16 of an inch of adhesive. This will be easier to gauge with experience. Use the same procedure on the outside of the pipe, beginning with a thin coat applied with pressure. A large amount of adhesive piled on the joint does not want to stick, so begin with a thin coat applied with pressure to wet the entire surface. It's easier to apply the adhesive if the pipe is able to rotate, but it's also possible to apply the adhesive working all the way around top and bottom. It just takes a little more effort. The application on the outside is thicker and should be from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch thick. All of the excess will be pushed off to the outside when the joint is assembled. This can be scraped off and placed back in the container to be used on the next joint as long as it has not begun to harden. The working time for the adhesive is about 15 minutes once it's mixed with the hardener, so there's no reason to rush. There should be plenty of time to do multiple joints with one mix of adhesive. Smaller amounts can be mixed if problems with weather are being encountered or if only a single joint is being bonded. Just make sure and use the appropriate amount of hardener. When placing the fitting on the pipe, press it together with a slow, steady motion. Don't rotate the fitting more than necessary, and make sure that it's lined up before putting the pieces together. As the pipe and fitting are pushed together, a bead of adhesive forms on the outside, indicating that the proper amount of adhesive was applied. Once the pipe is assembled, a pipe stand or other device should be used to hold the pipe rigid while it's being cleaned. If the fitting is moved around too much at this time, it's possible to draw air into the joint and cause a leak. Once the joint has been assembled, use the spatula or Bondo spreader to remove the excess adhesive. Leave a small bead of adhesive all the way around, creating a nice transition between the pipe and the fitting. Again, the adhesive that's taken off can be used on the next joint as long as it has not begun to gel or harden. Use a solvent like acetone to clean the adhesive from your tools and to clean your hands. The adhesive may be flaked off after it dries if it has not hardened completely, but it's always easier to clean tools while it's in a softened state. After the joint has been assembled, it's necessary to keep it rigid and still until the joint starts to harden. At normal temperatures of 75 to 80 degrees, this will take from 15 to 30 minutes. This can be longer at lower temperatures. Once the joint begins to cure, the adhesive will become slightly firm. The adhesive will not come off onto your finger if you touch it at this stage, but the joint is not completely cured, so don't stress the joint by handling it or moving it at this time. It must be fully cured before it can be moved. You can accelerate the curing time using an electric hot air gun. The normal amount of time to get a joint to gel with an electric heat gun is approximately 5 minutes. Be sure to keep the heat gun constantly moving so as not to have excessive heat on one spot. After about 3 minutes using the heat gun, the adhesive will not come off when touched. At this point, it should be left for an hour to cure. By using an electric heating blanket or collar, the curing time can be reduced to about 15 minutes. The electric heat blankets are available in all sizes and attach with snaps or Velcro. It can be difficult to get the heat collar on and aligned without moving the joint, so be certain that the joint is gelled before assembling and using the heat collar. When the joint is fully cured, it's ready for installation. If you have any questions or would like further information, there are several ways to contact us. For engineering and manufacturing, contact Grace Composites at 501-676-9505. For sales and marketing, contact Westfall Company Incorporated at 636-938-6313. You can visit our website at www.frpbridgedrainpipe.com. And we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you for choosing Grace Composites Bridge Drain Pipe.